morning, everybody. Can everyone hear me? It looks like it. Ben, we're good to go?
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you. Morning, everybody. Welcome to the COAST webinar and a little bit of an introduction into our Blue Pathways Initiative. My name is Tom Romer. I'm the director for the Blue Pathways Initiative. And before we get us on our way, I would like to acknowledge that COAST's offices and our first innovation hub are located around the Inner Harbor in Victoria, and which is, of course, belongs to the traditional territories of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, which are today known as the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. Kim, Bethany, and I, however, actually hail from the lands of the Coast Salish people today, where all three of us are in Vancouver, and that's in particular the territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I don't know if you've heard about us. If you're new to the COAST webinars, so COAST is the Center for Ocean Applied Sustainable Technologies, and it's an initiative of the South Island Prosperity Partnership in Victoria. It was originally conceived to form Pacific Canada's hub for the sustainable blue economy. And what does that actually mean? Well, in a nutshell, we exist to foster the growth of the blue ecosystem and build a community within it. And the most direct way for you to connect to that community and to benefit from our programs and service streams is through a COAST membership. So the membership that we created around this is specifically designed to support companies within the blue economy and at every venture stage. And it can be individuals, can be students, small companies, medium companies, large-sized businesses. We have non-profit associations in it, government, finance, and any other organizations that serve as vital partners within that sector. And the COAST membership opens the door directly to a broad spectrum of services. We do things like we highly subsidize work. We offer meeting and event spaces that could be at the network of COAST Innovation Hubs. As I mentioned at the beginning, the first one just started in Victoria. You can get access to tickets to COAST mixers, meet peers from around the sector. You get discounts to industry events, have access to our membership portal and the whole online community. You have an opportunity for media and content collaborations. You get access to COAST's digital learning hub, the Blue Pathways, which is, of course, something we want to talk about today. And last but definitely not least, we have the opportunity to connect with the Indigenous leadership across the province on ocean innovation. So if that's of benefit to you, that would be one of our member services as well. So getting to today's topic, arguably in our ecosystem, or to be honest, in every technological community, the main issue is to stay relevant, to stay competitive, to stay in touch with the state of the art of the technology. And this staying in touch, that is becoming more and more difficult for the simple reason that technology is moving forward at such a breakneck speed. And the economies are diversifying. There's new economies emerging at the interface of existing ones. So who can keep track of all of that? That's where Blue Pathways comes in. That's what we're trying to do. So Blue Pathways is COAST's newest initiative. And we try to, at least, I'm not saying we're solving it, but we try to address all of the above. And by one way of addressing, if you want, the staying relevant component is to curate courses and materials and knowledge and resources from around the country, from around the province, but ideally from around the world. And the question is, of course, what kind of knowledge and training is really needed? Nobody can be a subject matter expert in all possible subsectors. The blue economy is I wouldn't call it a catch-all phrase. It's starting to demarcate itself very nicely, but it's still a very large spectrum of individual technologies. And so nobody would be able to identify all the training and all the skills that are needed within there. So what we need to do is use a more interactive approach. And that's where the community aspect comes in. So ideally, we would together build a bit of a hub and spoke model where members, COAST members, can suggest and request courses and say, hey, there's some element, and we can get to one today, IoT, AI, where I could really use a little bit of upgrading, or I need contact to an SME. Can you help with finding us something? That's what we would do. At the same time, we have on the other side of the spectrum, we have then those training providers, those subject matter expert that says, yes, I have information to share. So we hope that we can create a network of providers, both public and private, it's not just a public sector, that can propose and develop new content. And I'll tell you a little bit more about all of that, how that works at the end of the webinar, but I really want to get into it. Maybe one more note here. The second aim of Blue Pathways is to find support for that training. We know that bursaries, scholarships, internships, sponsored field studies, all that kind of stuff, it's all aimed at removing access barriers. And that's especially important for small and medium-sized businesses, individuals, indigenous peoples, and that's what we're here for. And because of that, we're very excited to announce that we have Coast Capital Credit and Savings Union to come aboard as one of our founding partners. So Coast Capital has taken great interest right from the start in sponsoring Coast and Blue Pathways. And frankly, we couldn't be happier to have them with us. It's a very dynamic, very active relationship. And I would just like to say thanks to Coast Capital for being with us from the very first moment on. And if you allow me, the third component for Blue Pathways will then to create a platform for relevant discussion and input. And what I mean with that, it's pretty easy nowadays to get overwhelmed with information. I mean, if I Google something and I get 2 billion matches, where do I get started? And so even in the blue economy sector, there's just a myriad of sources to monitor. What we're trying to do because of that on our end here is we try to separate the wheat from the chaff a little bit, if you wish. And so we hope to offer some good foundations for exchange, and our in-person mixers and the webinars is just a couple of examples how we want to do that. All right, enough of that. Let's get to today's topic. So today we're diving into the future a little bit with our Blue Pathways initiative. We're quite excited to get this off the ground now. And as I mentioned before, this it's a little bit innovative. It's an educational program that's all about preparing the next generation to take the lead in ocean technology and sustainability. And of course, all of you know that this is an area that's becoming increasingly vital. It's to a degree an offshoot from the green economy, but not completely. It has its own peculiarities. So it's very important to cater to that unique skill set that's required to be successful in it. I couldn't do it myself. I certainly can't do it myself. And I'm really excited. We have a couple of experts here today, one on artificial intelligence and the other one on IoT and intelligent systems. One comes to us from Northwestern University, Bethany Edmunds, and from BCIT, the BC Institute of Technology, we have Kim Dotto. And just in full disclosure, I know both of them. So the reason why I brought them here is because I've worked with them in a previous life. I was a VP academic at BCIT, and Kim, Bethany, and I have worked together, and we've jointly, I think I can say, driven forward a lot of exciting initiatives. Kim is the Dean for Applied Research and Innovation at BCIT. And Kim, maybe you could give us a little bit of your background and context.
Sure, Tom, thanks. Good morning, everybody. As Tom mentioned, my name is Kim Dotto. I'm the Dean of Applied Research and Innovation at BCIT. I work in an area called the Center for Applied Research and Innovation, where we have a mandate from the provincial government to work with industry around doing applied research as opposed to discovery research. So we're looking at solutions that are implemented in industry reasonably quickly, and for doing innovation to help those companies innovate, create new products, new processes, and work to commercialize the things that they can put into industry. My personal background is I've been doing IoT since the 1980s. I started off doing data recording systems for the automotive and trucking industry, but have worked in a number of other fields, including oil and gas and the marine industry. at one time, I was also the dean for the School of Transportation, so worked quite closely with the marine industry in that area. My background is electrical engineering and IT, and hopefully I can provide some insight into some of the work we've been doing and some of the benefits and some of the issues around using IoT in industry.
Thanks, Kim. Appreciate it. Moving over to Bethany, I let her introduce herself, but because Bethany is a very modest person, there's a couple of things that she would never mention, so I shall do this. And so Bethany has she's definitely one of the best known faces in the Vancouver tech community, and she has been named one of BC Business's most influential women in STEM. Business in Vancouver's 40 under 40. And the YWCA's Women of Distinction, and she currently serves on the board for the Artificial Intelligence Network of British Columbia. So, Bethany, over to you.
Thanks, Tom. So I am Bethany Edmunds. I'm the Assistant Dean for Northeastern University's Vancouver and Seattle campuses for our computing programs. And we came to Vancouver about 5 years ago, really focusing on recognizing that computer science is for everyone and everybody should have a pathway there. So we work really closely with other sectors to try and figure out how computing can be integrated into those fields. So thank you so much for having me. My personal background is in the early aughts. I got my PhD in artificial intelligence before it was anything that was going to be anything. So it's been an interesting journey to see how it's blown up, and I hope to help enlighten the group on some of the best ways to integrate it.
Thanks, Beth. We're definitely looking forward to that. Okay, to get us started, I would like to quote Ray Amara. Ray was the past president of, or he is the past president of the Institute of the Future. He said something which really resonated with me. He said, "We tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run." And I believe this is very true, especially in the area of high technology. We often generate within the society a hype over something, then everybody rushes to it, and then there's a bit of a moment of pause, if you want, and that's often reflective in the stock market. When we had the dot-com crash of 2000, all of a sudden the internet was not quite as good as everybody thought, and then it surpassed all expectations. And I think we're a little bit in the same situation. And if we go to the next slide, Ben, and look a little bit at how technology has evolved, there is this I'm sure most of you have seen this slide or something similar before, but this Industry X.0 approach. And it started, of course, in the 1700s when manual labor was replaced by mechanization, and we had steam power and the steam engine. And then about 100 years later, slowly but surely, the idea of mass production came up, assembly line, electrical energy. So the entire electrical revolution, taken out everything from gas lamps to steam-powered engine, was very, very groundbreaking. Then again, about 100 years later, we started getting sort of after the war, getting into computer systems and electronics, and the first, like the beginnings of automation, and I wouldn't even call it really robotics at that time just yet, but automating individual tasks. And then you can already see when you look at the timelines, and of course this is only an approximation, but the timelines get suddenly much, much shorter. All of a sudden, you're talking only about 40 years between the 1960s to about the 2000s. That's when the entire thing that we call the internet came up, and with it then right away afterwards, the cyber-physical systems, the connected systems, the worldwide interconnected system. We call it now the Internet of Things, IoT, large networks, you name it. This is technically where we are right now. We are actually at Industry 4.0, and this should live for a while. And this sector, this element, is is far away still from its peak. There is a tremendous amount of innovation happening in there. And yet at the same time, we have the advent of an industry 5.0, where we produce massive amounts of data. We use predictive analysis, and artificial intelligence, which it's with its large language models that now combines everything into one approach, is suddenly rising to the top. Mixed realities, of course, the whole idea of using virtual reality for everything from data visualization to training to you name it. All of these things sort of feed into the same box. And the question is, going back to Ray Amara's quote, are we currently overhyping the artificial intelligence, or are we looking at something that will, in a few years, groundbreakingly change the industry? I tend to shy away from that word disruption. For many years, everything was disruptive. It was sort of the bon mot of the year. Everybody talked about disruption. Disruption is actually not like Uber, for example, was not a disruption. Maybe unless you were a cab driver, it disrupted your life. But all it did is it applied the internet technology into a specific sector. The definition of disruption is that it changes our lives, our work lives, fundamentally, that it finds its way into virtually every sector, including the blue economy. And that is the question now with Industry 5.0. Is that the next disruption when the current one, Industry 4.0, is actually still fully underway? So it's an interesting time to be in. And again, it's now only 20 years that this change has happened. I don't know what comes up in the next 10 years, but that's also not my mind to predict here. I want to start us out with Kim. So Ben, if you could take the slide down. Kim, you've been involved with IoT. I think you just said it since the 1980s, and to tell us a little bit what you do at BCIT with that.
Sure. So BCIT, as I mentioned, we have our Center for Applied Research and Innovation. One of the groups within that area is our Center for IoT. What we're trying to do is not only work with companies in order to help them implement IoT, but also to raise the education level generally in industry around it. IoT sounds like it is a single monolithic process or something that you can just say, I'm going to go and do IoT today. But it's actually an amalgamation of a whole bunch of different technologies. You have to have sensors, the edge devices in which to collect the data. You have to be able to worry about how you get that data back to a central location to be able to process it. You have to worry about how you're actually going to display and interpret that data. So it's a very complex application that requires multiple layers of technology. If you look at just internet technology alone, you've got your physical layers, you've got your cybersecurity, you've got a whole bunch of different things that all have to work perfectly in order for something to happen at the other end. And it's not really straightforward. There are a lot of other issues with IoT. Many of the edge devices are have to be solar powered or battery powered because they're remote. They could be in the Arctic, they could be on a ship, they could be located just about anywhere, which also brings challenges around how you get your data back, how you actually service those instrumentations or those edge devices, all the way back to how you actually look at the data in the end, the reliability, the cybersecurity aspects around that as well. So we try and cover all of that ground with the companies that we work with, also with the courses that we teach and the activities we do, such as these webinars.
Yeah, I always remember the big difference between the universities and Carey was that the universities often the impetus came from the inside, whereas at Carey was always the collaboration with industry. It was always that finding solutions to practical problems. That's where you guys always excel. What would you say is your largest project so far that you've tackled?
So our largest project we've worked on today is probably our partnership with YVR, and it's more of a number of multiple projects rather than a single project. One of the larger aspects of the project, if you look at the background slide, you can see an example of one of the devices that we have designed and been working with YVR on. So YVR has a number of problems that they want to solve. One of them is environmental monitoring of the runoff from the actual airport itself into the channels that eventually end up in the ocean. And so typically they've been sending out people to do samples once or twice a day, analyze the data, bring it back to enter the data into some sort of recording system, then produce the reports. It's been incredibly time consuming for them. They have spent a lot of money and a lot of time trying to do this, and they get very little data out of it in a real-time methodology. So what we've done is design a sensor system that can be placed into the outflow channels on the YVR site, which monitors things like oxygen content, dissolved organic matters, minerals, and various other things on a continuous real-time basis. Of course, YVR is a very large place and highlights a lot of the issues that I was talking about. There isn't a central power source that you can connect to on all parts of YVR. Terminal building, obviously, but even once you get onto the runways, there's very little availability of power for a number of reasons. It's generally too far from the central buildings to go Wi-Fi, so you're looking at issues with data collection. Again, the remote locations for having to go and service the devices if they get plugged. So it's kind of a microcosm of everything that you would see in a IoT project just about anywhere in the world. It's worked out quite well. I won't say replaced 2 staff, but what it's allowed 2 staff members to do is, rather than spending their time collecting data and doing the samples, it's allowed them to do something different or more useful with their time than just literally driving around trying to collect samples. It's also providing them with that real-time data that they can actually look at. One of the things that Thomas mentions about Industry 4.0 and Industry 5.0, we are really at the cusp of where we're generating so much data from IoT devices around the world that we don't have the ability to actually do anything with it. If you look at the statistics, there's about 80 zettabytes of IoT data generated every year. Not on this project, but across the world. That's 80 billion gigabytes of data. And there's not enough humans on the earth to actually process all that much data. And so we're going to have to heavily rely on other systems, artificial intelligence, to be able to process that data. And so I don't see Industry 4.0 and Industry 5.0 as 2 separate things, or one's going to supplant the other. It's very much complementary. Some of the other projects we've worked on at YVR are helping them do people location and data around how many people are in the terminal at the time, how fast it takes someone to move through the terminal, with all being anonymous data as opposed to actually being able to identify people. They need this for current operational and construction. They also need it for future planning. And we've helped them work on things as simply as, how many taxis do you need to have in order to get the people off of the site as fast as possible? Literally, they used to look out the door and go, we need more taxis. But now we have worked with students to design a system that uses cameras to actually count and monitor the taxis and automatically order new taxis or indicate that more taxis are needed rather than having to have that done manually. So it's been a very all-encompassing project, but it's been very fruitful, and a lot of involvement, not only from faculty, but from students and folks at YVR as well.
Well, pretty impressive. Well, I mean, all the stuff that you do is, of course, also immediately transferable into maritime environments and applicable. So only because it's at YVR doesn't mean that it's limited to an airport use or so. So yeah, that's fascinating. You mentioned no human can process all that data. Well, I know one, and that's Bethany. So I'll just pass that on to her. It's a fantastic bridge. So Bethany, let us know what you're working on.
That's a great segue, because again, my background's artificial intelligence, and as I alluded to earlier, back when I graduated, it was not really feasible to do what we're trying to do now, and it is through the use of IoT and all of this data that is collected that now machine learning is becoming so useful in so many different spaces. So at Northeastern, like I said, we're trying to we really focus on the applications of computer science because our students come from different undergraduate institutions and different sectors. What we then do is have our students apply that knowledge to computer science. So they come out, and so we have individuals with that are pharmacists, and we have individuals that are economists, and so we have people that actually have these biology backgrounds, and we put them in these research projects similar to what Carrie does, but in their last semester they do a research project with industry partners. And so one of the projects we have going right now is with the Pacific Seaweed Industry Association, and so they're working with Indigenous partners to try and make predictions using the machine learning algorithms that they've learned in their computer science degree. So we're really trying to find solutions. So taking the cutting edge computer science, which again is able to take data and make inferences about what could be coming, what patterns are happening. So for instance, if we're looking at forest fires, where do we think forest, that there's a bunch of research in forest fires that our faculty and students do, which is, okay, which trees are likely to go up, which areas is there new growth? If there is a dry patch, what do we think would happen if a forest, if a fire caught there? So really looking at different ways of applying this knowledge. And it's really about integrating, because traditionally computer science is about solving the math part of it. And it was like, oh, here's a fun problem to solve. But much like the area that Kim's in, it's like, okay, that's all great, but how can we use it, right? And how is this useful to people? And so what we really focus on is, okay, what is the applied part of that, right? So how can machine learning help in this area? And it's really about listening and working with partners in different industries to say, okay, their number is 70, right? We think 70%. 70% of what? What does that even mean? And what does the data mean? Because what we do get is lots and lots of numbers in these amazing packages, but what does that mean, right? How do we actually apply that? And once you produce a prediction, then how do you actually apply it? Because sometimes numbers are just numbers, and that's not very helpful. So it's really about working together and being able to apply what those predictions mean.
Wow. So, what are your predictions where AI will go? Is it sort of an exalted tool that some people use largely in the big universities, or is it something that will profoundly change the labor market? So is it a truly disruptive tool, or is it a truly disruptive element, or is it barely a tool?
I think, I think that it's going to lose the hype just like the internet did, right? So it's very interesting being on the board of AI and BC, because it's like, okay, there are AI companies, but in a few years there won't be AI companies. It's like saying that, you know, I'm a web, what was the term we used to use? I don't remember, but that, you know, I'm on the internet, we're a web store, right? Like, and it was just like, oh, we're an e-commerce site. That's what they used to call them, right? And I was like, okay, but if somebody nowadays said that they were an e-commerce site, you're like, oh, really, right? So recognizing that it's going to be something that there are tools that are built in. We're not there yet, and I think that when it gets there, not everybody will recognize that it's inside. So you know, we have text predictions on our phone all the time, and that's just going to get more and more integrated. I think it's not going to be oh, I'm using AI now. It's the software that we're using is integrated in, and it happens to be using this model of prediction. And so I think that yes, in a few years, everybody's going to use it in all of their roles, and it's going to make us a lot more productive. But I think it's going to be in an invisible way that maybe people won't recognize that there's just predictions being done in the background of what they're trying to do. And so they may be procuring different software to say, okay, where do we do these taxis, and how do we purchase the software to make those predictions and to streamline our business. But you know, I think the AI piece is very much just hand wavy. It's math, like it's probabilities, and it's doing amazing things like large language models. I know, I guess, how many do you two use ChatGPT?
I have, not on a regular basis, but it does have its applications and uses.
Yeah, so I mean, I hate writing new pages, like starting a document from scratch. I just hate it. And so being able to just go there and use it, and you know, it's not all of my work. It doesn't take over my work. It just changes the way I work. And so I think that will be where we end up going with it.
Yeah, on that context, I saw an interesting discussion about employment, simply employment. So if I have a person, and let's say I need a marketing report done, and that report would take 5 days, so I have to hire that person for 40 days, for 40 hours, sorry, for 40 hours. If the same person says, I can write this thing in 1 day because I have generative AI create the first bulk, and then I just go in and edit it and I make it look nice and so on. So in a day and a half, I have that out. But I still want you to pay me for 5 days because you get actually the product for 5 days worth of work. And it's my knowledge of generative AI that allows to cut short. I think we're in for a lot of really interesting labor force discussions on that. So yeah, I mean, I come from a big data background. I started out in astrophysics, and then when I came to Canada in '93, I created production control software for the lumber industry, and we used to read out PLCs and store the data on a SQL server, and then we just derived stats from that. But the scary part was once I then ended up in public administration, how quickly I lost track of the state of the art, right? You always think your knowledge carries you for so long, and suddenly you realize you really know only the fundamentals. So just enough to be dangerous, but yeah, interesting times, that's for sure. Kim, what do you think? You alluded to it already. So do you think that Industry 4.0, firstly, is 4.0 and 5.0, are those really two different worlds, or is one just sort of the natural evolution of the other?
I think they are two different worlds in that the technologies that you're using for implementing them based on IoT is in, Industry 4 and AI is in Industry 5. So I think they're two different aspects of technology, but I think Bethany was right in that you'll know when they have merged when nobody talks about AI anymore. It's like computers were in the 1970s and 1980s. Nobody talks about, oh, I've now got a computerized fridge, or I've now got a computerized microwave, or whatever. It's just generally accepted that there's a computer or some sort of computing intelligence behind almost everything that you do. It's the same thing with software. You used to have software-driven stuff. Software is ubiquitous. So the internet is ubiquitous. And so I think you'll know when they finally merge, when people stop talking about the individual components of them. But I do think they are quite separate or complementary technologies that have the ability to work together and the ability to be a bigger whole than the sum of their components. And so I think that's ultimately where we're going. Interesting challenges, though, coming up with IoT and with AI. As you've said, big data, or I've said a lot of data. How do you store it? How do you process it? How do you move it? It's very expensive to store zettabytes of data. It's very expensive to process zettabytes of data. If you're looking at some of the IoT, the AI models today, it's cost billions of dollars to train them, and they're running out of data. Interesting on a job market kind of note. I was reading an article that said that there's now going to be a new market for writers because all of the natural language that is available to be used to program or to train these AIs is all been used. We will run out of new data within the next 2 or 3 years, at which point there may be jobs for novelists and technical writers that didn't exist before, just generating data for AIs to be trained on. So it will have all sorts of different aspects in terms of jobs, in terms of how things are done. But you do have to be aware of the limitations. You do have to be aware of the environmental concerns. When it takes as much energy to run a 30,000 community, 30,000 building or person community as it does to run ChatGPT for 1 day, it's a lot of energy that is not necessarily sustainable. And I think that's something that has to be looked at and has to be considered. AI is great where it works. It's not the end all to be all for processing data, though.
Yeah, yeah. We're not talking about micronuclear plants today. That goes beyond the scope of this webinar. But funny that you should say that. As part of Blue Pathways, of course, we're trying to find sponsorships, and we've talked to some high-tech companies. a lot of the big players in industry are telling us, okay, right now is not a good time to ask for sponsorship money because we put everything into AI farms. Every dollar that we can make available, we put somewhere into a massive, I don't even know how many are out there now, farms like that. So yeah, what you say, Kim, it's certainly interesting. And I mean, the blue economy, I would stipulate, is it's neither immune nor is it any different, right? At the end of the day, all of that will hit the blue economy just as head on as well.
Yeah, and as I was saying, the technology is ubiquitous. It's in everywhere. So whether it's the marine industry, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's computing, doesn't matter. It's all going to affect the industries the same way. And as you say, Tom, the blue economy is not going to be any different. Some unique use cases because of the nature of the marine industry. You've got ships out in the water where it's hard to get data back. You've got all sorts of infrastructure issues and worldwide scheduling problems, but yeah, it's not really significantly different than any other industry for being exempt from the changes.
Yeah, I would agree. And of course, then the question is about the training. We get a little bit over now into the Blue Pathways element. Bethany, I meant to ask you, how do you folks at Northeastern University design your programs? Are you, especially like your graduate programs, are you building more like a cadre of specialists who have this very in-depth but very small knowledge, and they will need to form part of a team in order for it to apply it into an environment? Or do you more look at creating generalists who have a bit of a basic understanding of everything? How do you approach teaching in this new reality?
It's a really great question. I think one of the things that we found, so I'm a computer scientist, so I can say some of this stuff, is that traditionally it's been a separate team. And it's been people working in as individual contributors and trying to advance their software. And what I found is that it's not always very useful. And it hasn't been applied in the best ways that it can be. And so we work really hard to make sure that all of our classes have teamwork in them and allow for everybody to bring their own expertise. And what this allows for is it teaches people to listen and to value what everybody's bringing to the table, and that allows for really true interdisciplinary work. And that by being able to break up a team and figure out how everybody's contributing and understanding, you get to go to a better solution, allowing for the disagreements that come up whenever you work on a team, but allowing for that understanding of, okay, when we're working with, let's say, an external partner where I don't know the material, let's listen to it. Let's hear how that works. I'll propose a solution, and it may be wrong because it's in the wrong area, right? So we're teaching them the cutting edge computer science, the cutting edge machine learning, but also being able to communicate that to somebody who maybe doesn't understand, and to really recognize that in that conversation, even if somebody doesn't understand the algorithm or even what an algorithm means when they're talking to them, that doesn't mean you can dismiss their contributions. And so really being able to take a very solid skill set of computer science and being able to apply it in different scenarios by working on a team, which actually reminds me, so one of the things that I don't know what the audience is like here, but one of the reasons why I just want to kind of go back a half a step if we can, and say that one of the reasons why big data and artificial intelligence is affecting these fields now is because while we've made predictions for a long time, even with our own big data, where we're going, machine learning and what it allows us to do is look at factors that we never looked at before, right? So as humans, we actually throw out a whole bunch of information and we say, I think these 3 variables matter. I think these 3 things will affect, right? So let's say, go back to the taxi example that Kim mentioned. I think that it's time of day, I think that it's traffic patterns, and I think it's flights. And those are the only things we look at because as humans, we can't look at everything. But now that we have big data, we actually can look at everything, right? For as many things we can monitor, and this is especially why IoT is helpful, right? You actually can put monitors on things and we can start just saying, well, what if everything matters? And that allows us to get beyond what humans can figure out and beyond what we can predict, to say, okay, if we have all of the, let's say, all of these oceans mapped out, and we're able to take satellite imagery, how can they look at it in such a detailed way and process it and make predictions that as humans we would make if we were able to comprehend it, but we can't comprehend it. And so being able to take that, and that's why the 5.0 is coming, because we're going beyond what humans can actually predict, even if you're an expert. And so, you know, that's what we're trying to prepare people for, is to say, okay, now if there's a prediction, how do we make sure, how do we get to a point where we can apply the right systems to make those predictions, and then work with the individuals who are telling us how to apply it.
It's interesting with AI in a sense. On one hand, it's this massive engine that can change the way you do business, and then on the other hand, you have this but somebody, I saw that term, the naked user, who basically has absolutely no background in it. And ChatGPT or any of the Gen AI engines offer interfaces now. And so when we queried a few members on what Blue Pathways should offer, one of the elements that came up was prompt crafting or prompt engineering. How can I write a request for the AI engine that's neither ambiguous nor limiting, that generates exactly what I need from it? And we've heard that in very many different spots, including, you know, and we often think sort of scientists and engineers. No, but it goes all the way down, don't want to say down, it goes all the way into like clerical elements and like day-to-day elements. Do you think that in the not too distant future, prompt crafting courses will be as ubiquitous as like Introduction to Excel and Introduction to Word became in the 90s?
I think more like typing classes, right?
No,
right. I guess more like the introduction classes, right? Where
Yeah,
I think that generations are coming up and they're just playing with it. Our students, right? They're just in there doing it and playing with it. And I think what we'll actually do is untrain a bunch of people right? So Google taught us how to search using very small words that aren't human-like, right? We're just like, okay, we put this word and then we put a clarifier, and so I think that as we get further along, people will just speak to it and it will give you really good prompts. I think that there's going to be a generation that is going to have to transition to it, feel comfortable with it. It's a fun toy to play with, and so I think that there will be classes because people are concerned. I think that you don't need them, if I can say that. And I think that it will be one of those things that in an interview, it'll be about efficiency. It'll be, you know, how do you make sure you, like you were saying with the marketing person doing the job in one day. I think it's going to be like that, in the same way that, yeah, nobody really takes an intro to Excel class anymore, because they get to play with it as they go through their day, and they figure out the best way that it works for them.
So if Blue Pathways aims to be a Coast Learning Hub and the service to its members, and it aims to curate courses from a variety of providers, maybe even international, but let's walk before we run. But what's your recommendation for courses related to AI? What should we put up there? What should we unearth?
I think understanding the basics. I think even just computational thinking, like, why is a computer making a prediction that it is, right? I think a lot of times people think it's magic, and then actually this is, if your data is like this, you know, you're not going to get good output. And so being able, so there's, to your point, there's 2 points. There's kind of 2 realms to go, which is, are you developing for yourself, or are you developing for, like, to do your job better, or are you developing your industry or your organization to use AI? Because I think those are different things, right? As your company is or your organization is looking at capitalizing on some machine learning models to do better predictions, then you need to figure out, okay, what does that mean? What's actually possible? How do you curate your data? How do you hire even? And for that, like, AI and BC has created some workshops, and I think that that's a really fantastic space where it's, okay, how do you take an organization and get into the AI world? But I think that there's also, how do I put AI in my job? And how do I understand what's happening? And I think that there's a lot of power in saying, okay, it's not magic. Here are some things that you can do. Here are the limitations. I think the buzz has really hurt a lot of things, because it's like, okay, it's magic. I trust that it's giving me the right answer. It may not be, right? And there's some magical places that's failed, and especially outside the realm of computer science or mathematics, it doesn't really understand all of the context. And so recognizing its limitations will be really valuable to people.
Right. Interesting. We have always the last 15 minutes reserved for audience questions. I just want to quickly run back to Kim. Same question, basically. If I had a company and I wanted to get into IoT, where would I start with that? What's a good entrance level for me?
There's a number of ways you can go. BCIT, I'm not going to get into the full program. As you know, we've covered pretty much everything out there in industry. Specifically for IoT, we have a couple of offerings of micro-credentials that would allow somebody just to get the introductory basic idea of what IoT is and how it works all through the different layers. We also have a secondary course on actual case studies for a variety of industry sectors. And then third, we're just in the process of about to release an actual hands-on course where you can create an IoT pathway all the way from an edge device all the way through, saying, using Amazon Web Services or Microsoft tools in order to get that data back to a dashboard. So there's a lot of different opportunities. We have ranges of courses where you can attend in person, but we also do a lot of just-in-time online self-directed as well. I mean, Bethany made some good comments about multidisciplinary and teamwork, and we do a lot of that as well. The YVR project, we had 50 students from School of Business, School of Transportation, School of Computing, School of Energy, all working on these projects at one time. But sometimes you just need the information on your own pretty quick to be able to get your job done. The other thing I would mention about one of the skills, and Bethany touched on this as well as you did, is the critical thinking aspect of it. As Bethany said, you don't necessarily know if the data or the output from your AI is actually giving you something that is useful or is true. And so the ability for people to have that multidisciplinary view, that critical thinking skills, is going to be critically important for going forward in the industry with all of these different technologies.
Yeah, well said. I think that's a huge element. It has always been the problem with data. A lot of people were just too willing, but the computer said so it must be right, and so, yeah, absolutely. I want to make sure that we cover the audience questions. I see one from Dwight here. Dwight says, I do use ChatGPT frequently. I've been wondering if it is also using all the prompts coming in as further data for inclusion into its knowledge reservoir. Are my prompts becoming data for the model to extend itself?
Absolutely.
Depends on if you pay enough, no. But yeah, there have been some famous kind of IP issues where people have put in prompts that they really shouldn't have, and became part of the public domain. So.
Interesting.
And there's also the issue, I was just going to say, there's also the issue of self-reinforcement, that AIs are generating data that then become part of the training data and self-reinforce. And so, yes, your data is likely being used, as Bethany said.
Interesting. That's a whole new facet of privacy that we never thought about. And with each emerging technology, you kind of scratch your head and wonder, okay, what else am I missing with this one here? Any other questions from the audience? If you have anything that you would like to ask of Kim or Beth, please just put it into either the chat or the Q&A, and we'll answer it right there. Maybe just then, while hopefully some more questions comes up, I'm starting to wrap it all around. So Blue Pathways is supposed to be a community builder, right? We're not trying to develop courses and put them up. We're definitely not trying to compete with the colleges and universities. We're much more interested in being a broker. That's maybe the right way of putting it. Going out, seeing what's needed, also taking recommendations from members as, hey, I took a course at X. This would be something really, really interesting for you to put out to the community. I can recommend this course. This kind of thing, because the success of the community as a whole, if you want the success of the ecosystem, always depends on exchange and information sharing and fostering each other, and then hopefully bringing the sector up as a whole. If all goes well, and I'm quite positive, the Blue Pathways website, the segment, not the website I should say, but the segment within the Coast site, the element in the menu tree, should go live hopefully next week, and but definitely the week thereafter. We're getting very, very close, just doing a bit of bug testing right now. And what you will see is we use a catalog model where you can browse through individual topics like courses, or if there's any bursaries available, or what pertinent themes are, and so on. But one of the big elements, and I can't stress that enough, is interactivity. This is a member-driven site, so it's not us to kind of ram it down people's throats and says, well, that's all that you can get. It is a thing we're saying, hey, I'm a member of Coast. I need you to find me something that or someone that can help me with X. Dwight has another question. So how about new emerging areas of IoT and AI/ML in the marine space? Anybody got any insight on that?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. So in addition to my work at BCIT, I've also been working with the Ocean Supercluster for the last few years, just as a reviewer. And a lot of the work that's going on right now in the marine industry around IoT is around safety aspects. You've got a lot of people who work on ships or work on offshore drilling rigs or in other environments where there's very few people. You may be working by yourself. Most of the time, you may start off in the beginning of your shift and not see another living human being for another 8 hours. And so being able to track and monitor the safety, wellness of peoples is actually a big issue in the marine industry right now. The other one is around shipping and port management. It's very expensive to have a ship sit idle in port for any length of time, and getting real-time data on where ships are and how long it's going to be until they get into port to be able to load and unload is critical to maintaining, that blue economy of sustainability. You don't want to be burning more diesel fuel than you have to in order to keep the ship at sea. And that comes into looking after weather data and various other things. So large integration in multiple data sources, both human generated and satellite generated, and just very complex IoT and now an AI process to be able to manage those port operations.
Thanks, Kim. We've got one more question, and then I want to make sure that you two get the opportunity to maybe have some parting thoughts here. But oh, no, I got another one. Let's see, maybe talk quick. What strategies can be employed to facilitate secure and ethical data sharing between industry, academia, and government stakeholders in the blue economy in order to maximize the benefits of IoT and AI technology while addressing concerns around data privacy and ownership? Anybody got a thought on that?
So this is a really big question, especially in healthcare. And so depending on what the privacy concerns are, and I'll be honest, I don't know what they are in the blue economy, right? But there are ways to generate synthetic data or
Anonymize.
Thank you. To anonymize data in such a way that you're able to transfer it back and forth in a more secure and private manner. And so there's a whole other area of research to figure out how to best do this. So I think interdisciplinary learnings of, okay, how is this done in other fields, and being able to figure out what exactly are the concerns that we're trying to address.
There's also ways of working with universities and other post-secondaries and other government organizations in terms of how you restrict the access to the data. At BCIT, we sign multiple non-disclosures, and so you can be fairly secure that the data that you provide isn't going to be shared with your competitors or anything other than that. All of us in the post-secondary organizations also run our own research ethics boards. If we're doing any work with data, as Bethany said, to anonymize health data, but we go through fairly stringent processes in order to make sure that everybody's needs are met in terms of how the data is handled, what's going to be done with it in the end, and how it's made available to students and to other industry members if that's what people want to do.
Perfect. Gord left an interesting note. He says, our organization has a large 1.5 petabyte data repository of diverse marine data. We'd love to work with the panel members to make this easily accessible for their student programs and innovative projects. If there's interest, we'd be happy to reach out to them if contact details can be made available. Absolutely. We will definitely do that. And I'll figure out how we do that, Gord. But yeah, we'll send that out. The whole session will also be available for review on YouTube. So definitely spread the word. That's exactly what I always meant with interactive community with everybody contributing. That's a perfect example for that. So many thanks for that. All right, 3 minutes left. Parting thoughts. Ladies first. Bethany, any wise words?
I would just say don't be intimidated. So, it seems like, especially how much AI and IoT have been built up, it seems like, oh my goodness, you just said it's industry 5.0. I have no idea. I feel like I'm so far away from it. I think getting involved, recognizing that your knowledge is extremely valuable because these computers are stupid. And it's only just taking, right, and they need to be interpreted. So get in there, take a course, or just start playing around and investigating yourself, and just the more that you have to understand, like the more that you can get engaged, the more that you can participate, and it's not too late to get into it.
Yeah. My Alexa just laughed when you said computers are stupid. Kim, parting words from you.
Just kind of echo Bethany. We may be experts in IoT and AI, but you are the experts in the marine industry. Without that industry knowledge to be able to interpret the results that are being generated, it's just data. Get involved. Your offers to provide data for us for student use is very welcome. Thank you for that. But as Bethany said, get involved. It's not too late, and it is going to become the way industry works in the future, whether that's now, next year, or 10 years from now.
Excellent. Thank you both. Thank you for our audience. If you want to get in touch with Coast, here's our web address, canadacoast.ca. Please do so. And would love to have you as a member if you aren't one yet. We try to live up to our mandate to be Pacific Canada's hub for the blue economy. Once again, thanks to Coast Capital Credit and Savings for being a sponsor. And please, pay us a visit on the website and see when the next webinar is being scheduled. Kim, Beth, thanks again for both of you joining us here today. And we will pass on those contacts so that we can hopefully all benefit from the ongoing discourse and exchange. All right. Have a good afternoon, everybody.